Okay, now we're going to talk about putting piping into a seam allowance. And I'm following the directions of the handout that was given to you in class um, entitled Piping. And it is from Sewing Solutions or sewing.org, where we can get all of our information from on that website. It's their handout 11.305, and it just goes through talking about piping. It first tells you about making your own piping, which you can very easily do. Piping is actually a cord of some type centered inside or encased inside of a piece of bias fabric and then stitched along this side, creating a piping, a little tube of fabric. Now you can also create flat piping. It doesn't have to have the cord. You could just fold over your fabric and have it be a flat piece that is inserted into your seams. Today you're going to be given a piece of ready-made piping that comes in a bag like this. Bias tape, maxi piping. And it looks like this. You can see inside it's got that cord in there that it's stitched around. It's not flat. It's got dimension to it. And that particular piece of piping is made with a solid color of fabric in the store generally when you buy it ready-made, and it's not always a real delicate, nice piece of cotton that's covering it. So if you have something that you want to match or put print against print, do something more delicate, you may want to always make your own. So to begin by inserting it into the seam, what I want to first do is on the right side of your fabric, we're going to mark our stitch line. This is a 5/8 inch seam, so I'm going to just mark my stitch line. And I'm using a 5/8 inch wide ruler and a chalk wheel here. And I'm just going to mark right in there with a line of chalk. My 5/8 inch stitch line. That is important to know and understand where that is, because the next thing that we do is we take our piping and we put the piping, or the rounded edge, out into the garment, and we position that stitching like where it was stitched already to hold it together. We put that on top of the stitch line right here. Some better light over here maybe. There we go. So I'm going to pin this down, matching my stitch line at 5/8 of an inch with that particular stitch line on the piping. So here we go. We're just going to pin that into place. This, putting my pins down away from me so that I can pull them out as I approach them with my machine. I'm still staying on that edge correctly of the piping next to my stitch line. And I have it pinned. Now to sew piping, it's best that we use a zipper foot, and so that if we didn't, when we're sewing and we want to be up close to that, we have got an issue with unbalanced here, and it might roll and turn, and you wouldn't get a nice clean stitch line. So I'm going to take off, this is my Juki, I'm going to take off this particular regular foot and put on my zipper foot, one of my zipper feet anyway. This is a snap-on one. I can hit that little space, right? All right, threads here out of the way. Now, you'll want to make sure that your needle is clear of your space there, so it isn't going to hit metal. And you do want it over nice next to where your piping is. So I can lay this though right there, and I'm able to stitch along, and it's even. It slides right underneath my edge there. So I'm going to take out that first pin now that I've positioned it. I'm going to bury my needle for a second so I don't lose that. I am going to do this first row with a little bit bigger, like a base, not a full basting stitch, but medium size, like 3.2, 3.5, something like that. Not the great big stitch. And we're not going to back stitch this. We're just going to stitch along that edge. I'm going to hold my threads so they don't create a big knot. No bird's nesting. And again, I'm stitching so that my foot is right next to that piping edge. Okay. So now it's basted in place so that I can stitch it, my regular seam. It's laying right in there. My seam, stitch line, my blue chalk line was right here, and now I have stitched it down on there. Okay, so I'm going to move the camera just a little bit again here. Now we put our right sides together like we're going to sew the regular seam, which is what we're going to do next, making sure that our raw edges are even over here. And now I'm going to pin it again along this edge, keeping everything nice and even. All the raw edges. And we're going to stitch now with our regular size stitch. Default, like 2.5 on most machines, whatever your medium range there is. Now we're going to push this right up next to that piping again. And now since this is a regular seam, I am going to back stitch it or close it. So I'm going to take a couple of stitches forward, holding my threads, then back stitch, and now stitch on down. Always making sure I'm nice and tight against that piping right there. Otherwise, too much of the piping will show out instead of just that little cord that you want to show. And I'll back stitch and stitch off. Now my piping is inserted. There it is. It would be pressed and your seam finished however you're finishing your seams inside. One good way is to maybe go ahead and just serge this down and then press it. Depends on where this is in your operation of your garment, whether that makes sense or not, what you do to finish that seam. And here I am back from pressing that little sample. I did go ahead and serge everything together, as you can see back here, and then I pressed it all to one side, but I came and made sure that that pressing of that piping didn't overlap on anything. Gave that a nice press there. So now there's my finished piped seam, and finished on the inside as well.